Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me on the From Nowhere to Somewhere podcast. My name is Luke Staton. The reason behind this creation is to share words of wisdom, hope, and optimism through conversation that can show us just what's possible in life. I've been truly inspired by the words I've not only listened to, but deeply heard from the people I've shared conversations with. You will hear how everyday people overcome trials and tribulations, and when faced with adversity, find a way to use it to their advantage. A common theme throughout, from all the different guests on the series, that wherever they are from and from whatever background, is they all have a desire for more from life. They all want to live a life of fulfillment. I hope you enjoy listening as much as I do creating. Thank you for joining me. To be able to sit with such remarkable people and have such wonderful, in-depth, often vulnerable conversations with people that have achieved such magnificent things is like a dream come true for me. The whole reason for starting this podcast was for me to be able to learn from incredible minds and to be able to share that with anybody that wants more from life. And today was just no exception to that rule. This conversation had so many things within it. From spending time with Phil Jackson, the Chicago Bulls head coach through their prime time, looking after the likes of Dennis Rodman, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, to working for England in a World Cup, to being in a Champions League final and having to treat a player while he fell asleep on the medical bed to make sure he could perform the next day, to touring with U2, to being flown on private jets to treat some of the world's biggest names and celebrities, to having a meal with Steven Gerrard, who he introduced to Sir Paul McCartney, who's also one of his clients too. This conversation isn't just about a guy who became a physio. It's a conversation about a guy who wanted more from life and still does, and has been passionately pursuing progress towards greatness from the day he entered the sporting arena. I found this conversation so enlightening, so inspiring, and I'm full of admiration for Dave Hancock, who was my guest today. We met in 1998, and today we talked about his journey since the day that we met to now. I hope you find it as inspiring as I did. Thank you so much. Enjoy. Yeah, so it's interesting, Dave, that, the 40 miler that I did about 3 years ago, I did it 2 years on the trot. Yeah, it was my big thing of the year to do a 40-mile ultramarathon. And now it literally is just in 10 weeks' time, I'll be doing that as part of the bigger picture for the 100-miler. I have no aspirations right now to go beyond 100. But when I did the 40, if you'd have said to me when I did the 40, you're going to now do double that plus another 20, I would have said, listen, just physically not able to, because at the end of the 40 I was wiped out. I only just got under the threshold. So, but it's incredible. And then you start to think about somebody plants that seed and you start to think, I wonder. And then before you know it, you're attempting these things. And I had my brother sat in here last week that's just accomplished a 268-mile Pennine Way. It's called The Spine Race. There's actually a documentary on Prime Video, which is phenomenal. And my brother is on the documentary when he was crewing for a guy he was coaching to get through it. So 268 miles from Edale into Scotland. And it's like minus 15, 117 hours it took him. And he had, I think he said, approximately 8 hours to 10 hours sleep over that period of time. And bearing in mind, Dave, my brother nearly died 5 years ago of a massive stroke. Fortunately, his life was saved by a surgeon. That there's only 4 to 5 of these surgeons that work in the UK, and they finish at 5 p.m. And on Christmas Eve 5 years ago, my brother has a stroke in the morning time, gets taken to hospital an hour and a half before this surgeon disappears. And when my brother went to see the consultant after he'd saved his life, it says 9 to 5 on the board. After 5 o'clock, there's nobody there. So he would have died. So I think them kind of stories like spur me on to think, if my brother can come back from a massive stroke, then I can do double the 40 plus another 20. And today, part of our conversation, what excited me so much, Dave, about getting you on to this podcast and this conversation is you and I met nearly 2.5 decades ago, maybe a little bit longer. I think it was like 1997, 1998 at Blackburn Rovers when I was a young professional football player and you was a young aspiring physiotherapist. And my early memory of you was just that relentless pursuit of progress. And you was like a revolutionist, if you like. And I always remember now when I look back and reflect, I probably didn't realize it at the time, but my real fond memory of you, Dave, is that I was always told by professional sports coaches that I needed to get bigger, get stronger, and look more dominant on the football field. And I never really did. But then I came to you and I remember saying, Dave, would you help me out? The coaches are telling me I need to get stronger, I need to get bigger. And bearing in mind, you wasn't even meant to be looking after me because you was the youth team physio and I was the reserve team physio. And I remember you spending 3 hours with me. I think you did 2 programs for me, a weight strength program. And I remember you taking me through this program. I know you probably have no memory of this because you did so much and done so much since, but I'm that little 17, 18-year-old kid, desperate to become a professional sportsman, being told he's got to get bigger and stronger. And then you spend 3 hours with me in your own time that you don't have to do. And I've always remembered that. And I don't know why I've remembered it, possibly because I'm just so appreciative that somebody wanted to help me. And when I followed your journey over the last 20 plus years and seen that you've gone from Blackburn Rovers to Leeds United to Chelsea to England to the New York Knicks, you've been in baseball, you've worked for Nike, you've done all these incredible things. I just felt what a wonderful opportunity to have a great conversation with somebody that's done so much in their own life and also met so many phenomenal people too. So welcome, mate, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Luke. I certainly don't remember that, but I've always been like, try and help people, and that's probably the reason why I first started going into physical therapy or physiotherapy. My view about life is that you should always try and help people because one day you're going to need some help yourself. So I'm glad you reminded me about that story. And I hope that it helped you in some way.
It 100% did. And I think other than just the short-term physical benefits that it gave me, I think that I've continued the philosophy, and subconsciously you don't know what you're learning from people a lot of the time, but your desire to help me and lots of others too, it clearly has an impact on you. And when it has an impact on you, I think you get to a stage in life, you want to be able to have that impact for others too. So it really did leave that lasting impression. So thank you so much for doing that. And I just want to go back to that time because would you have been in your early 20s back then?
Yeah, I think I went to Wolves before Blackburn, I think in 94. So I would have been, I'd probably been about 26, 25, 26 then.
And at that point, Dave, when you joined Blackburn Rovers in your mid-20s, did you have the aspirations to go on and do what you've done now, or was it kind of find your way, or did you have the master plan put in front of you?
No, I didn't really have a plan there, but I always knew that I wanted to be good at what I was doing because I loved it. I never saw it as a job. I've always seen it as a hobby, basically. And I think when you're really passionate about something, and you don't necessarily just see it as a 9 to 5, and you've got these aspirations to be, learn and be a sponge, which is something I've always done and still do to this day. I don't think in life you can ever stop learning. I think whether that's, like you say, subconsciously, just conversational wide, learning from other people that you work with, admire people that you work with, see why they are successful. And I've been really fortunate sort of throughout my career so far that I've just managed to work with some incredible athletes, entertainers, actors, like who've maintained themselves at the very, very top of their game and sort of seen why. So, I think I always wanted to be good at what I did, but I never sort of envisaged that it would sort of probably go to where it's sort of gone. And I don't tend to look back and reminisce, really. I'm always trying to look forward and push boundaries. So that's sort of always been my foresight. I'm looking for like, right, what are we doing next? Or where are we going? Or, how can I help? And doing that even now in the software company I'm running was like how can we help people in what they're doing on a daily basis using tech? So yeah, that's sort of really always been my sort of, move forward, and I don't look too much backwards.
And one thing's for sure in your industry as physios, I mean, they are, for me, from what I remember in sport, the hardest working individuals, because they just seem to be 24/7. You know, they've got the all week doing their thing, Saturday game, Sunday rehabbing the players that need treatment or injuries, then back to Monday again. And you have to love it to put those hours in. And can you remember a point that when you start to get into professional sport that you start to realize what it's going to take for you to get to those levels? Or did it just was it just within you to do that, kind of have that work ethic?
Well, I think my work ethic has definitely come from my mum. She's 80 and she's still working as a hairdresser. And I look at my brother, who again's got a tremendous business and work ethic, like, done very well, and he's still up at 5 a.m. going to work. So I think that was sort of inherited in us, that, you want to be successful, you want to respect things that you've been able to earn. I think, when you buy your first nice car, or you buy your first, watch or anything like that, you have a little bit more appreciation of it, because you realize how hard you've had to work for it. And I think that's a good grounding for us, like my first car, my first Rolex watch, or whatever it would be that you sort of plan to go and buy. You're a lot more appreciative of it. You're appreciative of it than, if you've sort of inherited the money, or, mum or dad have bought it for you or whatever. But I think the work ethic has sort of been installed in us through my mum. Some good Irish roots that have come through to us, I think.
And
And then,
what did you see, Dave, from your mum that you feel had that impact on you?
well, my mum will do anything, like any mum, right? They do anything for the kids. Um, and I think that's, everyone who's listening to this can resonate that, your mum will do anything they possibly can to help you. And my mum would be almost like, if we needed something and it was within our means, and we came from a very, normal working class family, if my mum could do it, or she'd go an extra mile to basically earn some extra money for us, she'll try and help us and do it. And that's always been the case. And I think that sort of rolled off onto me and my brother. So I'd quite admire that. And then later on in life, being able to work with incredible people, who have been like, super successful, U2, Paul McCartney, Madonna, Kevin Durant, Frank Lampard, all these people who are like, you look and you watch and you think, well, how have you been so good at what you do for so long? And then you sort of see that, just even though they've got like natural talent, they have a tremendous work ethic. Even, that, financially, they don't need to do it, but it's built within their DNA. And then you see how successful those people are, and it sort of rubs off on you, I think. And when you're actually within the sort of background of them and the support mechanism of them, you really get an insight about people that have been successful and continue to be successful. And I think that's in any walk of life. I think if you talk to any CEOs or any business people, or people who have been really, really successful, there's sort of this relentless hunger to keep pushing and keep driving and keep reinventing themselves and challenging themselves. And I sort of think that, over time, that's those working with those people and seeing success has sort of probably rubbed off on me a little bit.
And at what point did you start to see yourself as one of them? Because you've mentioned lots. You've mentioned lot.
I don't know if I'm one of them.
Well, you've mentioned. Well, you think about this day, right? You've mentioned lots of phenomenal names there that most people in the world will have heard of, and they trust in you to take care of them, which is just like, what? I mean, there's no greater honor than being asked by those people to serve them and take care of them. So at what point did you start to see yourself as you could become that person that could be in that elite circle?
Well, I think the first thing is I'm me, and I'm quite happy being me. And I've never tried to be anyone else. I think it's one of those, you either like me or you don't. And I don't, I've got to a stage now. I think years ago when I was in football, I used to worry about what people thought of me. and I'd worry about certain situations a little bit and think, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. Or, a classic in football would be maybe I'd finished everything. It's at 3:00, but I don't want to be seen to be going home at 3, because you'd be labelled as, you're not working hard enough, which is absolute bullshit. But, the sort of environments you're in. But I think as I got a bit older and a bit wiser, I've been very much like, not really, I'm quite happy being me and doing what I do. And I think if you're honest with people and you treat them like you would want to be treated, and you don't change, I think when you're sort of in those circles of sort of, let's say, celebrities or athletes or levels, and obviously you've got to have a level of knowledge and expertise, but your personality as well, and the way that you can be respected and respect them back, I think that goes a long, long way. And I think, being on the journey has massively helped. I think a lot of people expect to get there, but don't realize sort of the time and effort that it takes to actually get there. And if you listen to the stories and the things that some of these people have done to get there, and then once they get there, then actually to stay there is quite phenomenal.
And what have you noticed in that window there? That really great that you say that the effort that it goes to get there, but then to stay there. What have you noticed the difference between the people that get there and then potentially get complacent and fade away, to the people that you've spoke about that actually get there but stay there and want to keep going?
Like a relentless pursuit to either from an artist's point of view, to recreate, and like Madonna or YouTube or Daniel Craig, any of those people, like, keep on pushing and recreating what they do, and not standing still, and always like looking, right, what's the next thing? How can we do this differently? How can we change what we do? How can we add to what we know? A lot of people, like you say, I think, you can become complacent, and I think you can become very comfortable. So, the first time you earn your first million, right, I'm a millionaire, right? Okay, so I'm quite comfortable now. I've got my nice cars, I've got my house, I've got this, I've got that. Oh, what else do I need? And people, there's nothing wrong with that. People can, be quite comfortable and enjoy their life. And at the end of the day, life is about enjoying themselves. But I feel you can also enjoy yourself with what you do. Like I said, I don't classify what I do as a job, but classify it as a hobby. So therefore, I'm really enjoying my hobby. And I'm always sort of trying to look forward. And that's the thing that I probably learned the most off of sort of those very, very successful people in any walks of life, is that sort of constant pursuit. And sometimes I even sit back myself and think, my God, I remember a rehearsal with Madonna where it was like 2 a.m. and they'd been, like, the dancers and everyone had been for this tour that she's just doing now. Everyone had been with her like from 12 o'clock in the afternoon. It was 2 a.m. And she looked back and she was looking at some video and film. Most people packed up and gone back to the hotel. And she turned around and went, no, get everyone back. We went on till 4 a.m. Now that's pretty intense, but she's a perfectionist, and that's why she is who she is. And you sometimes think, well, why can't we just do it tomorrow? But that's not in her nature. Her nature is to push and push and push for what she loves to do.
So interesting.
You could look at that. You could look at that two ways, but I look at it as like, that's why she is who she is, and everyone's slightly different. Not to the extent that they're probably as intense, if you like, at that. But you see these traits in all these people, even athletes. You see the traits in their work ethic. So like Kevin Durant, he's out for 6-9 months with a ruptured Achilles. He's 6 weeks, 7 weeks in. He's like, well, why do I need to lift weights and do a pull workout? And wouldn't even, but yeah, come on then, let's get it done. Because he realizes that, if he puts that work in now, it's going to pay off later on, and his career is going to be back to where it was, and it's not going to be disrupted. Where a lot of athletes they'll argue with you about that. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference between why he is so elite and the best of the best, compared to people who are still good, but never will get to the heights of, say, him or LeBron or Michael Jordan or any of those other athletes. They have that trait to, keep pushing.
And what's
sorry, go ahead,
I'm
mate.
just saying, when you're talking there about Madonna's intensity to get it right, and Kevin Durant asking the question of why do it? As soon as you explain it, it's like, right, I'm in, because they obviously have the ability to think past the current position of where they are to forward of where they want to get to. And they know by doing that, it's going to help them get there. Why do you think sometimes, though, you said there that there's lots of sports people and lots of people in society in general that you may say to them, if you do this, it will bring you that because it's proven and it shows it. But why do you think they still choose not to?
Habits. I think people get into comfort zone and habits too easily. And I think it's very difficult to change habits. And people want to change habits, but they don't really succeed because they always go back to the norm. They always go back to the type that they used to, doing the things that they do in their life that they are quite comfortable within. People don't like coming out of comfort zones. People don't like pushing extra. I look back at some of the crazy shit I did. Like I was doing my master's degrees when I was at Blackburn in the 90s, and I lived in Leeds and I commuted every day across to Blackburn, and I used to do a full day's work, get on the computer at 6 o'clock, and I'd be typing my thesis through the night, do a full day, drive back home, sleep, drive back to Blackburn, do another day, and do exactly the same thing, where I'd literally be working for 24 hours because I needed to get something done to get my thesis out the door. And I look back at that and think, well, you're mad. But that sort of pursuit of excellence that I wanted to, and I could have paid someone to do my typing.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I want to do this myself because I want to own it. I want to know that I've done everything within this thesis to pass this master's degree.
And like you said earlier, that it was a passion for you. It was like a hobby. You enjoyed doing it. And I think sometimes, do you think that pursuit that you had back then, sometimes that has kind of had although you had lots of success, do you think at times in your life it's been a bit of a challenge being that way?
Oh, still is. Like for instance, the time you don't spend with your family, with your kids, constantly working, constantly doing things at weekends, constantly away. I mean, there's the sacrifice. And it's, like I said, it's not for everyone. But I think if people are listening, or younger people are listening to this podcast, and they sort of want to look at what success is, it's like, how do you quantify success? But to get somewhere, in my view, you have to have a plan, and you have to focus, and you have to work. There's no shortcuts with anything. And whether that's studying, doing a thesis, or whether that's being asked to go at last minute to see someone at a weekend for treatment, or whether that's to do something like with you, out of their hours, out of what their comfort zone that they're not getting paid extra money for, or constantly asking, well, why should I do that? That doesn't come into sort of my DNA. My biggest problem is I don't say no. But I also look at that as a huge plus to me, to be able to experience all the things that I've been able to experience to help people, and still classify those sort of clients and people as, professional colleagues of mine. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've sort of learned over the last 30 odd years.
Have you kind of reflected on when your real break came from being you started off at Leeds Rhinos, didn't you? Was it in the rugby game, and then went to Wolves, onto Blackburn Rovers, and the journey really kicked off? So have you ever looked at a moment and thought, that was a pivotal change for me, or you did something, or somebody opened a door for you to really get your career on track?
Well, I think Dave Fever helped me immensely. He was the ex-Manchester United physio who was at Blackburn with us. Dave saw something in me and opened a door for me to go to Leeds United. And he was actually offered the job himself and couldn't go for family reasons. And he recommended me, which was at the time, David Learian was like, well, who is this guy? And he said, well, why should I bring an academy physio into a first team? So that was a massive door that was open. And And then my job really was to sort of prove him right and not let him down as a friend and colleague. And then I sort of was able to apply my trade and use the people that I inherited at the club and bring everyone together as a team to sort of have some good success with those injuries that were currently at that club, which I think was a bit like, I was reading about Liverpool today, a bit like, you've got 10 injured players in the treatment room, just to get them out as safely and as quickly as possible. And I think that's probably, if I reflect, where sort of there was a pivot in my career that helped me sort of move up the ladder, if that's how you want to say it. But it was only through, I think, getting recognition from your colleagues and your peers and someone that you were working with who actually saw what you did day in, day out, rather than being at a conference and you put up a nice slide, etc.
What do you
think there's nothing better.
What do you think he saw in you?
Lunatic.
Have you ever asked him?
No, I've never asked him. I've obviously said thank you. But I've never asked him. Yeah, but he obviously saw something, to be able to do that, and I'm forever grateful, because it obviously allowed me to go on and on and on to what I've been able to do. But like I said, I tend not to reflect much. Only when I do things like this, I'm always sort of looking for what are we doing next, and where are we going next, and what can I do next, and how can I help you? And that's sort of been ingrained in me, for years and years and years.
And do you think that not reflecting and not looking back, do you think sometimes you maybe aren't giving yourself the credit for how far you've come and how well you've done? And also, there's loads of valuable lessons in the past, isn't there, when you look at them in the right way, not with regret or hindsight, because they're wonderful things. But hindsight's a great thing, but pointless a lot of the time. When we're reflecting now and looking at your journey, that I'm thinking, when I asked you the question, what do you think Dave Fever saw you that had a phenomenal career, saw in you? Clearly, he saw the things that you're talking about now, the work ethic, the desire to progress, the pursuit of greatness, to improve, genuinely an energy to just get better. Because for somebody to recommend you from an academy physio to a first team physio, that is a big jump, isn't it? And that usually takes someone knowing you really well to give you that chance in terms of a manager that you may have worked with in an academy that's grown and progressed, that takes you with them. But for him to do that, number one, it shows what he saw in you. But number two, what a great guy in him that he wanted to give you a bit of a leg up too, and pull you along on that journey. When you get that referral from somebody else that you value so much, I think also your belief in yourself grows too, because somebody's saying, I believe you can do it, that I'm going to put my name on you. That's got to make you feel good, hasn't it, when you respect someone so much? And when me and you spoke in London a couple of weeks ago, the first time we'd met since 1998, me and you was chatting about all different stories, and just phenomenal. And kind of, you can tell that you don't really go there. I just wonder why you don't do that. I know looking forward is drives you and excites you and motivates you. Do you not look back because you don't want to get complacent, or you actually think I've done that now? Or do you not even feel proud of the things that you've done?
No, I think it gives you confidence without a shadow of a doubt. But I don't really know why, if I'm honest with you. Sometimes I might have a conversation with someone like you, and then I'll basically go, oh, do you remember that? Or do you remember this? It's not something that I, constantly looking back. And obviously, I definitely learned from mistakes that I've made. That's probably more why I look back, is what mistakes did I make? What things could I have done differently? And I need to make sure that, I handle that better, or, I develop my skill set in doing something different than what I did then.
And Leeds, if I remember rightly, just tell me about the Lucas Rugby story, because I thought that I was sharing it with the guys on the podcast studio about, where you supported him, but just share that with the audience, because it's a beautiful story.
Yeah, so Lucas was towards the end of his career, and he was an incredible human being, right? We actually got invited and we went to his wedding in South Africa. We didn't realize how big this guy was in his home country. And then we went to see where he came from in Soweto, like a tin shack with a family of 8 living in a shed. It literally was the size size of a shed, in like poverty, like you just couldn't explain. And the fact he got shot, unexpectedly got accused of something, and like, that type of stuff, like real humble beginnings. And then to be able to do and come to a country and play in the Premier League and play the way he did and put his body on the line week in, week out for Leeds United and captain the side was like incredible. And if you really knew him, even to this day, I actually spoke to him about maybe 2 months ago. It's the same chief, it's the same Lucas. So the story goes that basically he was captain of South Africa. It was going to be his last World Cup. I think it was 2002 in Korea. Was it South Korea? 2002. And his knees were shot. His body was shot. And he was in and out of the team. And he had a torn meniscus, a torn cartilage in his knee. So I sort of said to him, look, we got 2.5 weeks. We could get the surgery. And I think we could sort of gamble at trying to get you fit, at least on a plane, to go and train with your national team and play in the World Cup. I said, because you're not going to be able to play with a torn meniscus. So we made the decision to do it. And then myself and the medical team, Mark Nile and Alan Sutton at Leeds United at that time, we worked around the clock with Lucas. So we had 3 sessions where we'd treat him in the morning, treat him in the afternoon, I was treating him at a clinic, or we go to his house or whatever. And we just worked around the clock because we wanted him to go and have his last hurrah at the World Cup. So anyway, he went and played and he scored. And they basically got through the qualifying rounds. And then when he came back, he had his testimonial that year. He came back and he wanted me to have his World Cup shirt. And I said, I can't take that. That's, really precious to you. It's been on your back. It's something you should give to your kids, something you should have. It's your shirt. And he said, no, please, I want you to have it. And he used to call me the Juju Man, which was the witch doctor. And then he got a pen out and started signing the shirt. So then I'm like, so I reluctantly accepted it. Right? But I was really like over the moon that he wanted to give me his shirt. And then he came into our office at Thorpe Arch and he said, look, I've got something for you. And he gave us all a Nelson Mandela book. So the autobiography from Nelson. And we were like, oh, this is so nice. And he gave it to each of the medical team who helped him. And he just said, look, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. See you at the testimonial. Bye-bye. And left. And I was like, this guy's unbelievable. It's like so nice, And all of a sudden, we opened up the book. And each of the book was signed by Nelson Mandela to each individual physio with a personal message to them.
Wow.
He didn't even say anything to us. Yeah.
He didn't even tell you. He just
didn't say nothing. That was like pure class.
That is pure class.
And I had another one with Daniel Craig. I was really fortunate to work with Daniel on Bond. And I did a load of rehab with him on the movie. Then he needed surgery. Then I did all the rehab with him after. And same, he sort of really appreciated it. Hugs, see you soon, blah, blah, blah. That's it, finished, see ya. Then about 2 weeks later, a box turned up at my house, and it was a Amiga Sea Dweller 007 watch, the watch that is the 007 watch.
Wow. And
I looked at it, I was like, oh my God. And then on the back of it, it's got inscribed, really appreciate all your help, love, Daniel. Did say nothing to me. And it's little things like that where you're like, wow, some of these little touches. So they're things that I've learned, over the years, is like with staff or just trying. It's not, you can't always please everyone all the time. And I don't think you should always try and please everyone all the time, but little parts of that sort of rubbed off in me, when someone helps you or someone does something, or, just a little gesture, even a card can go a long way, that you've got that touch point with that person to go, thank you. I very much appreciate it. More than just saying it. Here's something, I think that's something, as I said to you, that those two things that sort of rubbed off of me and become real class. And a lot of people don't think like that.
Yeah.
A lot of people like take. I'm paying you, so I expect it. Yeah, he's paying me. And yeah, he expects it. But that little extra thing just says a million things to me that he didn't have to actually say.
And
Yeah.
do you find that quality and that characteristic in a lot of these guys that have got to that level, although they're ultimate competitors and they're winners, they've still got that class about them?
Not all of them.
Mm.
I don't find that in all of them. No, definitely not. I think that especially in athletes, and sort of expectations are, I am where I am and I just expect it. I pay you, I expect it. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But then there's another side of the sort of top people that just do a little bit extra. So just trying to think of some examples for you. I remember like on tour with U2, Bono come to me. I typical Dave. I injured my back. The physio injured his back, and I was in a bit of a bad way. And he literally came up to me and said to me, he said, "Listen, take the plane. We'll fly you to Germany and see our doctor." And I looked at him and I went, "No, honestly, I'm fine." They went like, "No, you're not." And he was dead serious. It was the fact that he actually made the gesture.
Love it.
Little tiny things like that where you just, people will just do that little bit of extra. I remember McCartney leaving his house once, and it was Christmas, and he gave me a bottle of wine, and I sort of said to him, "Really appreciate it." Him and Nancy, who are lovely, lovely people, and he was just making himself a drink, and he says, "Do you want to taste that?" And all of a sudden, he's making you a drink. I'm sat and have a conversation with him. I'm like, "My God, this guy's a Beatle." But that little extra sort of human touch, and what I find is the people who are the very, very top just have that way of easing, someone who's sort of shell shocked, or they just have that way to just sort of do that extra little something. But like I said, not everyone has it, but it's a good trait. I actually, like I'm explaining these stories to you, I massively respect it and sort of definitely learned from that.
Yeah.
I think that extra little thing that you can do for someone goes a long, you won't realize goes a long way. And people remember that more than probably what they paid you to do.
Yeah. And just you sharing these stories with me, I have that feeling of, like, it just feels good to hear this stuff. You look at these people as phenomenal human beings of what they've accomplished, and that's what you see. And then when you hear these stories, it makes you kind of feel a sense of love towards them and
Yeah.
wanting to support them, and you want them to do even better because of the kind of human being that they are. And we both know that when someone does something like that for you or says thank you, shows gratitude in some way, that you do remember that forever, don't you? And it means so much, just somebody taking that time to think of you. Like you say, there are
Yeah.
U2 offering to fly you on their plane to get your back fixed. Just those kind gestures like that. But I often wonder why people don't think more like that. And I think it does come a lot from your upbringing, how you was brought up, the environments that you was in. But also I think in sport a lot that they start to get so huge and so big and so successful. Everybody runs around after everybody and everybody takes care of them and everything's done, that it becomes an expectation rather than I'm fortunate for this to be happening. It's like, this is what happens for me because I'm so great. Yet it's wonderful to hear from you these stories of these elite people that still remember. It's great to say thank you.
Yeah. Like I said, you're right. And yeah, like I'm explaining to you, it's not everyone. It's certainly not. It's a small select. But I think because they're the people's expectations, they probably don't think like that. Everything, like, as you know, footballers, silver spoon, everything's provided for them. They just expect. And sometimes it's like, well, the ones who, I'll give you an example. I reached out to an athlete I've looked after yesterday. And a lot of times, depending on the relationship you have with athletes when you finish with them, they might come back to you, they might not come back to you, but then there's one or two that will always come back to you on a text. Will always do something to help or support if they can. And this particular athlete, I needed some help with something, and he came back straight away. So the fact that he even just responded, it sounds daft, But when you're in the environment and you know yourself, when you're trying to communicate or ask someone for some assistance, you're gone, you're forgotten, you're dissed.
Yeah.
And that the fact that this guy, and he's very famous, he come back to me, says everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Class.
So yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's actually class. And I think that's a great trait to have, throughout life, but also even like when, you're not in the limelight anymore and you're forgotten or whatever, the people that you are friends with or have relationships with, or your colleagues that, more respectful when you're not with them all the time.
Mm.
And that for me says a lot about that human being. Because at the end of the day, right, no matter who we treat or who, whether it's, my 60-year-old lady with a hip, or whether it's, like I said, celebrity A, celebrity B, athlete A, athlete B, they're all humans, right? We all sleep, shit, breathe. Okay. For me, you should be treating everyone exactly the same as you would want to be treated.
Yeah.
You shouldn't change who you are because so-and-so walks in the door or so-and-so walks in the door, right? Everyone, and I sort of through my physio business, I try and instill this into all of my staffs. It's really important because why should you be any different? You should just be you. Always be you. How
did you find it though, Dave, especially in the football world or sporting world, when people was expecting and people was demanding, but people didn't show gratitude, or people's quite abrupt, can be quite rude in that industry, especially, I guess, when you're trying to get a player fit for a manager, the manager's under pressure, he needs the player fit. You don't want the player to be ready yet because he's not ready. And how was those battles for you?
So obviously, listen, that position, for anyone who has worked in it, is hugely stressful. But running a company is hugely stressful. Going on in front of 90,000 people is hugely stressful. Okay, you're in the environment with these people. They're human, and you might think, well, they've sung this song 1,000 times before, and you've performed for 30 years in front. It's still stressful. They still want everything to go smoothly. They still want to produce. With regard to the sort of level of respect, I've always been like, I am a sort of quite a strong character. I'm a very type A character, and that's got me into a lot of problems, I think, over the years where I've just aired my opinions. But I very much like, even if I reflect on those, I'm very much like, I wouldn't change anything that I've done. So I've always stuck to my morals of respect. Like, you respect me and I respect you. You don't respect me, then, I'm going to tell you that, I'm not your lapdog to do X or Y. I heard a story a couple of weeks ago about a player who turned up late, didn't apologize, was on the phone, and literally wasn't a top level player. It was a young lad trying to get into a first level, so peripheral, obviously on big money contract. And I was like, that is completely disrespectful.
Yeah.
And no one wanted to challenge this young lad because they're scared that there'd be a repercussion on themselves. But I'm like, that for me, when I hear that story, and then someone did challenge it, but when I hear that story, I'm like, if you don't change that ethos or you don't change that environment, right, that whole thing is going to just creep into your environment. And then once that happens, you've got no levels of accountability, you've got no levels of respect, you've got no levels of production. And that's not how any organization can run efficiently. It's doomed for failure. If you let those type of things come into your environment, it will spread. And people will just be, well, this is how it is. And I can do this and I can do that. But this club, I couldn't do this and I couldn't do that. It is different. And therefore I'm going to do that. And now I'm going to try and do this. So those sort of standards, I've sort of never let slip. And
Yeah.
even if it gets into a full on, I remember, it sounds hilarious, but I remember having a full on weekly argument with JT and Frank Lampard at Chelsea about having a TV in the physio room. And anyone else would not have stepped up to those two characters and said no. And it became an ongoing joke. And in the end, they were just sort of poking fun. But I was like, look, we're here to treat you. We're not here to watch TV. If you want to watch TV, go in the massage room, have a massage, watch the TV by all means. But at that particular point in time, I'm like, no, we don't need TVs in our physio room. And that's something that I stood against. But I was the only one. Everyone else within that my team would have backed down and gone, yeah, John, whatever you want.
Yeah.
And it was relentless. It sounds really trivial, but it was more about, this is our environment. You can have whatever you want in your dressing room or anything you want it within your canteen. But here, no, we're here to do this job, and this is what in our environment, and you come into our environment and we'll help you and I'll respect you, but you can't just have everything you want within our environment.
How was that challenge met?
I think it became an ongoing joke with them. They bounce off each other. I think if you ever spoke to them, now, they'd probably laugh at it, but they never, I think they got the TV when I left. Probably one of the reasons why I probably did leave. But I've sort of, stick to your morals and stick to your views. And likewise, sometimes you're going to be overruled, but it doesn't matter. If you're going to be overruled, by your boss or someone else, fine, respect it, and sort of move on. But at least you've aired your opinion and your views. The worst for me is not having, a constructive error of view or something if you're asked a question. I just don't think you become proactive. Everything becomes reactive.
Yeah.
That's not sort of how I've sort of been. And there's a lot of people, especially in sport, that I've sort of looked back, and I say in sport, in any organisation, there's two different types of people in sport. There's survivors, and you need survivors. You need people just doing the things that need to be done. And then there's innovators. But what you want in an environment is you want a nice balance between innovators and survivors. You don't want too many survivors because they're never going to push the needle. They're never going to move on. They're never going to make some challenge. They're never going to, ask questions. They're never going to look forward. They're just going to sit within their comfort zones. And I suppose you could apply that to anything in business or life. There's lots of people, and there's nothing wrong with it. But the ambitious people, for me, we need those innovators. You need those mavericks. You need those people who are going to challenge the norm, right? Because things will never move. You'll always just stay within status quo. And some people are happy like that. But for me, that's not really how you move on. You have to, always be looking forward rather than just go, oh, I remember, we've just won the Premier League or the FA Cup or whatever. Oh, we just keep doing the same stuff. My view would be, no, there's little things that you can do to improve for next season and things you can improve for next season. And let's look at this technology, or let's look at this software, or let's look at how we can improve that, or whatever it would be. Always sort of got to look forward and think about how can I improve what we've already created or done.
And how was it, Dave, when you're in that era there at Chelsea that you're talking about with Frank Lampard, John Terry, and under Mourinho? How was that for you? Because like you've just said there, you are a strong character, and I'm just thinking of Mourinho, which is such a strong character. How was that dynamic?
Well, there's a great story about Mourinho with me, which I sort of look back and think, okay, there was a reason why he did this. So for me, Jose's a winner, and he's not everyone's cup of tea, but he is a winner, and he will go above and beyond to win. And when you're in that position as a manager, you're judged by your winning. There's nothing else you're judged on. Play nice football, great, but you're only going to last so long.
Yeah.
The view is that you're in there to win. And sometimes that's relentless, right? In that pursuit of winning can be relentless, and it can really wear people out, players, staff. But my whole view would be, I actually went there to win. And I think if you talk to anyone who was involved with that team, you know, that's what he brought to the table. The relentless pursuit of winning, like siege mentality. And there was a situation where we had a couple of injuries. One of them was Frank. And I learned a lesson there where I was pushing Frank, and it was a hamstring. I was pushing him because Mourinho wanted him for the Champions League game. And I was more emotionally involved in it than I was from a mental perspective. And looking back in hindsight, I got too emotionally attached to get Frank fit for the team. And right at the very last hurdle, he had a relapse. So, you know, my view there was I was more emotionally involved than I should have been, rather than actually, you know, using my brain to decide when he would be fit. And clearly he was never going to be fit for that game. And if I had just literally pulled the reins back, which is what you needed to do with someone like Frank, because Frank's always push, you know, he wouldn't have been fit for the game, but then probably wouldn't have broken down and been out for another 2 or 3 weeks or whatever time it was. So there's a good lesson for me there. Anyway, at the time, this is before he got let go. We had a couple of injuries, that being one. And he said to me one day in training, he said, "Why haven't we got the best machines here at Chelsea?" And we had every machine under the sun. And I sort of looked at him and I could tell that he was really anxious and really stressed. And he said, I don't think we've got the best machines. And I said to him, "What do you mean, boss?" So training's going on, I'm currently training. And I said to him, I said, these and this are the best machines. He's like, oh. He walked off. And about 5 minutes later, he came back to me and he said, "I don't think you're as good as the physio that was here before that I replaced."
Wow.
So the physio that I replaced is a very good physio called Dean, but he wasn't a football physio. He came from UK Athletics. He'd moved on. I had stories like couldn't take out and do a football session. And that really hurt me. So I said to him, "What do you mean? Why? I've been in this for 15 years. It was like the pinnacle of where I needed to be. And here's the guy that I respect telling me I'm not good enough." So I've got 2 master's degrees, got this and the other. And I'm thinking, why has he said that? So it really hurt me because I'm passionate about what I do. So that night I went back home. I didn't sleep, tossed and turned. And I said to my wife, I went, "You know what? I think I'm going to jack this in. If the guy who, you know, is there winning everything and I've come here to win and be part of that team doesn't respect me and doesn't think I'm really any good, what's the point?" I was really down, really hit me. So then that morning I'm driving into Cobham and I'm thinking to myself, no, this isn't right. Absolutely not right. And I'm going through all sort of in my head why he thought about all those things, et cetera, et cetera. So I saw him at training the next day and I said to him, "Can I speak to you?" He said, "Sure." After training, he said, "Yeah." So I went out to his office and I looked him straight in the eye and I said to him, "You know what you said to me yesterday?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "I think you're wrong. And here's why I think you're wrong." And I went through a whole battery of things that I'd done in my career and qualifications I've done and things that I've been doing, the things I've been trying to change and help within the environment. And he looked at me and all of a sudden this big smile came on his face. He says, "Sit down." He picked up the phone and got the girl to bring in some coffee. And I looked at him and I was like, oh my God, you are just challenging me.
Yeah.
You were challenging me to see if I would actually confront you on this. And then at the very end of it, I said, "And I'm going to prove you wrong." So that was like a challenge moment where his mentality was, have you got the balls to stand up to me? And have you, you know, he used to say, "Are you a man, you know, to stand up with me?" And then the next day, I think I was around his house treating his wife.
Really?
Yeah.
That connection, do you think that connection, that trust, that bond was even stronger?
I think the fact was that he realized that people don't challenge him. You know, what he says goes.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that, you know, respect type thing. Whereas like, no. And I was quite happy to walk. And that's the other thing, right? Is that, the reason that I've sort of set the physio business up years and years ago, I was like, I don't really want to be in this job where I'm not enjoying it, and I'm just doing it because the fact I've got this badge and I've got this title, it doesn't mean anything to me. And in fact, I could have stayed at Chelsea, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. There was a restructure in the department, and it was like, I don't want to do this. I came here to do this, and now you want me to do that. And the viewer was like, well, you're on the same salary, you're on the same name, you run on the pitch. It was like, it's relevant to me. It's like, I want to be able to do what I want to do. And if it's not good enough for you, no problem. But so I set this physio business up to be able to sort of financially back myself. Whereas I think a lot of people keep themselves in jobs, like, as I said, the survivor mentality, because they like the name, the badge, and, to be in the industry and be in the sport, but they're not really innovative. And that's never been me at all.
Yeah.
And I that's just my mindset and my philosophies, and it's not everyone's, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I look back and I wouldn't change any of that. I think that's helped me get to where I've sort of been able to get to and enjoy what I've been able to enjoy. And if we're doing this as a reflection session, if you like, I don't think those situations, like, I would have never have gone to America if that hadn't happened.
Yeah. What was one of the moments at Chelsea that you look back on in real fond? I mean, a story come to mind is when you were telling me about the Champions League final when you was just on the clock treating Ashley Cole. Would you share that with us? I think it's a beautiful story.
Yeah. So we're Champions League final. Obviously, Chelsea haven't been there for, I don't think that was the first time they've been there, I think. I'm not great on stats, but I think that was the first time they ever been to a Champions League final in Moscow against Manchester United. That's 2008. So the night before the game, we had a circle, and Claude Makelele went through Ashley, and Ashley rocked his ankle badly. And there's 200-300 press, right? So they come in for the first 15, 20 minutes, and then they leave, and then Chelsea get into their tactics the night before the game. So it was clear as day Ash had really done some damage to his ankle. So we tried to sort of just say, stay out, just move a little bit, but he was in serious pain. So then when the press left, we took him in, and he'd torn his ligaments in his ankle. So me and Brian English, the doctor, we sort of went to work. We basically compressed it, getting ready it, did some injections, we did this, that, and the other. And then I actually slept on the physio table that night before the Champions League final. And I worked the ankle constantly, like compressing it, flushing it, because you don't want the thing to swell up. And I literally worked through the night. I didn't sleep. And then the next morning, I took him in the pool. We had to get movement in the ankle and see how he was. And then we did a fitness test in the afternoon down the Ritz-Carlton hotel in Moscow, because we couldn't go anywhere. So Avram Grant was the manager, and I remember pinging balls down the corridor and looking at everything, and still touch and go, but we didn't have anything to lose. So worked him again at the stadium, got the strap in, and basically got through 90 minutes, played extra time, scored a penalty. And unfortunately we lost when John slipped, which is obviously history, but that actually created a really good bond between me and Ash. And then obviously I was with England for a number of years at World Cups and Euros with Ash and the Chelsea lads. And then in fact, I saw Ashley at Birmingham a couple of weeks ago. So again, a really great sort of bonding story of just going that extra bit to help the guy play that final game, which was, I knew was so obviously important to any footballer. And I would have done that for anyone really, just because that's what, it takes to try and help someone. And obviously him as a character and as a guy clearly appreciated it and sort of kept in contact with me ever since.
How does somebody play 90 minutes plus extra time with that severity of injury?
Mental, for sure. A lot mental. And Ash was very mentally tough. He's one tough cookie.
Yeah.
And adrenaline. And the fact that we probably worked it so quick that we didn't allow it to swell, which allowed his ankle. I mean, after the game, the thing just blew up. But the fact that we didn't let it swell probably allowed him to move his ankle and do what he needed to do and get him through the game.
And nobody would be none the wiser sat at home watching it on TV. That,
Correct.
For a game like that, you'd want to get good sleep, good food, good preparation. And he's asleep on a medical table through the night before one of the biggest games of his life. It's phenomenal, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to still perform as well, and to still produce, and to last that long. I think sometimes you're right that the mentality just can bring astronomical things to you, can't it, when you want something that bad?
Yeah. And obviously the public don't see that.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating to me is like the ability of the human mind to be able to do things like that. There's another great story. People ask me a lot, like, who's the best athlete you've ever treated? And my answer is Jane Tomlinson, who was the lady from Leeds who had breast cancer and basically did all the phenomenal things she did for charity. And the story goes there, I was at Leeds United, and I was asked by the press officer, BBC, about doing a documentary on Jane. And I sort of knew of her from living in Leeds, working at Jimmy's, of all the incredible things this woman had done. But when I actually met her, I got more in depth on the story that she was a mum of 3 who worked as a radiologist at Leeds General Infirmary and never did any sport. And she had breast cancer and then basically was told she got the all clear. Then it came back with a vengeance. And she watched the Great North Run one day and she thought, oh, I quite fancy doing that. So she went and joined Rothwell Harriers or whatever the local team was. And she started running. And then she did a marathon, and then she obviously earned money for charity. And then it became, we're going to cycle Britain, then we're going to cycle across America. And it just went one to the other to the other. So by the time she came to me, she'd done all these incredible feats and got an OBE, I think. And I was like quite in awe. And then she was doing an Ironman. And she walked in, like killed over with this back pain. And they said, can you help her? And I said, well, I try. And I remember putting the x-rays up and she had metastases through her body. She was at stage 4. And she had a bag of pills. And I was very much like, you're doing this in 2 weeks? And I've run marathons, so I know what, a marathon's like, but 120-mile bike ride and then swim. And then, things that you're doing, and it's like, I know how much toll that can take on your body. It's like incredible. But cancer, stage 4, and all these metastases within a bone and a pelvis and this back, I was like, this is impossible. So I went about treating her, and some of the other guys at the club helped, and she used the facility to train. And it was funny because I thought she was doing this full time, and she's still working.
Really?
Unbelievable. I mean, this woman blew my mind. I said to her, Jane, I think you should get like a flat bed going, because she was doing it in Florida. And she said, oh no, I can't do that. That's charity's money.
Really?
I said, but if you sit in economy and fly to Florida, I said, you might get off the plane in 5-6 hours and then you might not be able to move and you're not going to be able to do the race. So, use it. She went, no, absolutely not.
She wouldn't?
Just looking at her, no, she wouldn't.
Wow.
I couldn't believe, honestly, I couldn't believe it. And then we treated her, but she wasn't right. I mean, she might have been sort of at this position when she came in, really killed over in a lot of pain. And when she left, she was probably at this position, but she still couldn't stand up straight. But she's got to run a marathon, do 120 miles and this swim.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was like, and then I see the x-rays and I'm like, there's absolutely no way she's going to be able to finish this. No way. Of all the years and all the things I've seen, like, no way. And she did.
Wow.
And at home, I've got a picture that she signed to me of her at the finish. It's like pride and place in my office, of like just what the mind can do for someone to achieve something if they're really, really determined for it.
And she wasn't an athlete either.
No, she wasn't. And also the fact she worked and had 3 kids and was a normal mum was just like unbelievable.
It's incomprehensible.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really fascinating. Like, if you really are determined about something, your mind is so installed at finishing and doing something, you can do anything.
How do you think that works? How do you think that works, Dave? With the, like, when you look at that and you know what you know, you've got all this education and you're looking at the x-rays going, this is impossible. How does that work?
It's all your mind. It's like blanking out pain. I mean, I can't comprehend. I know how much pain I was in when I did my marathon, especially the first one. I can't comprehend what discomfort the woman would have been in. And then what got me afterwards, someone said that they thought she looked fake. I was like just incredible, mind over matters. It's like a phenomenal, powerful tool, you know, and God rest her soul. But like that was like a huge inspiration to me. Like, I can't tell you. And I look at some athletes that you see and you think, I tell them the story because it's like, look, this is what you can actually do. Another one was Frank when his mum died. I remember that as well.
Frank
I
Lampard.
going up to him after the game. Yeah. So he's really close to his mum because I think he's got 2 or 3 sisters, so he's the only boy. And he was really tight with his mum. And his mum got pneumonia, and all of a sudden, she died very quickly, suddenly, quite young. And I knew how close he was to his mum, like I am with my mum. And we had a Champions League game, and I was like, I think it was against Liverpool. I just remember that he hadn't trained for like 3 or 4 days. His mum had just passed, and he came on and played. I think he scored. And I'm sat on the bench watching this guy thinking, how are you doing this?
Yeah.
You're like, incredible. So, you know, the mind for me and the psychology, and likewise, when we're talking about habits and things, you've just got to be so determined to do something. And every time you get knocked back, you got to just pick yourself up, keep pushing on, knock back, push on, knock back, push on. And that for me, you know, is the difference between people who are really succeeding and maybe semi-succeeding.
And I think they create such good habits, Dave, don't they? That sometimes they can trust themselves to go on autopilot, and you know they've got the ability, they've got the desire, and they've got to trust themselves that it'll all come good at the right time. A good friend of mine, Jamie Lawrence, only person to ever be sent to prison and become a Premier League football. Did you?
I worked with Jamie at Ghana. Yeah, Ghana national team.
Yeah, phenomenal person. And I remember him, you know, talking to me about when he was about to play against Liverpool for Bradford City, and his dad was kind of like, I think he was on the edge of being here or not. And Paul Jewell, who was the manager of Bradford, you know, Jamie said, I just don't think I can play, Gaffer. You know, my dad, it's on my mind. And Paul Jewell just gave him a few words, and he said, just do it for your dad, play for your dad, and left it with him. And Jamie said he had the best game of his life, and afterwards just broke into tears because the emotion was so there with him that he could play the game. He knew that. He said it kind of just brought something out of him, that he was flying into tackles. And it was to keep Bradford in the Premier League too, so they needed to win. And I think when you talk about pivotal moments like that you trust yourself, and it brings that extra. You hear these stories, don't you, of people, especially in the military, that somehow found a way to carry one of their comrades to a location, you know, and you think how, and sometimes I think it defies science, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's a very, very, very powerful thing. You know, like I said, sometimes I think sport, especially sport, is very much psychological.
Yeah.
You know, I had the privilege of working with Phil Jackson in the NBA, and I used to sit and listen to the guy all the time, where he was, you know, huge on philosophy and clearing your mind to be able to go and play and not have any thoughts within it. You know, he used to meditate. The players used to meditate before they go out and perform, and talk about traits and characters, about how you would look after a certain type of player versus another type of player, and giving them the freedom to express themselves. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating, really, really powerful stuff.
Tell me about that, Dave, because Phil Jackson, many will know him from the Chicago Bulls. Where did you come across him, and where did that relationship start?
So Phil came into the Knicks as the president, and the guy that recommended me to the Knicks was his physio, to say, at the Lakers for years. So we had a sort of mutual friend, colleague, who we both highly respected, and he knew of the fact that he had recommended me to the Knicks. So I sort of had an inroad with a fellow colleague, and I used to sit and have.
Sorry, Dave, carry on, mate. You used to sit and.
I used to sit and have breakfast with him every morning, and just. I've always been a sponge. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I think have helped. Again, always ask questions. Yeah, even if they're the stupidest questions in the world, I've always done it. Right? I'm just like, why? Why are you doing that? What's that for? Why is that happening? What's your thought process on that? Why does that go to that? What's your views on this? Like, in anything, anyone you come across, like, constantly, I'm always asking why. Like, I sat with Edge, right, and asked him his whole process about how they make music, because for me that's fascinating, that you're in this environment with this absolute genius of a guy, and how does he do it? You speak to McCartney about Beatles, about the relentless performing, and the fact that they go in the studio and produce 3 songs within a day. And it was relentless rehearse, perform, while there were young guys in Berlin. And it's fascinating. Just my view is always ask. My other thing is, you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
A lot of people are very, let's say British, if you want to say that, use that. It's like, well, if you never ask someone, then how do you know?
And when you said
ask someone for something, you don't get it.
And when you said there about listening to Phil Jackson, you said that he would work with different players in different ways to get the best out of them.
Yeah.
In what sense? In any?
Yeah. So the best one is Dennis Rodman.
Right.
Watch The Last Dance, which is a great documentary.
Loved it.
There's a bit in that Last Dance where Dennis wanted to go to Vegas in the middle of the season.
Wild character.
Imagine this now. Imagine that a player like Nunez asked Jurgen Klopp, boss, I want to miss the game at the weekend. I want to go to Vegas and meet up with Carmen Electra. I want to party for 2 or 3 days. Imagine that now. You imagine what the repercussions will be for the manager. Imagine what the repercussions will be in the press, right? But Phil's view was, he was he needed to let off some steam. He was the sort of character that if you caged him, he would rebel. And that was his nature. So every coach that ever had him had, tried to control him. And his view was, you don't control Dennis. You let Dennis open his wings and fly, and he'll come back and do anything you want him to do. And that's how you manage Dennis. Whereas another player would be slightly different. And his view was that, if he gives him this, he's actually going to get so much back from him, which is why they ended up, one of the main big reasons that they won so many times was that of his defensive prowess is within the Bulls dynasty.
And would he let him miss a game to go and party then for a few days?
Well, if you watch the documentary, that's exactly what happened. He went and met Carmen after a game, missed a couple of games, actually didn't come back on time, right? Came back late, but then they won the NBA title that year, and one of the reasons is because of his defensive attributes that he'd literally run through brick walls.
Incredible.
For Phil.
Yeah, what a story.
That's Phil. That was Phil's different mentality about management and control, and realizing that this particular athlete has a completely different mindset and view about many different things.
What's something else, Dave, that you learned from Phil Jackson that sticks out in your mind?
Well, meditation's one. To actually just be in the flow when you play. If you've ever done sport, I'm sure, Luke, you're better to answer this, but for any of the listeners, where you do something incredible in a game, even at amateur level, you score a try or you score a goal or you nutmeg someone and you don't realize how you've done it. But you look back and go, whoa, can't believe I just done that. So you're then in the flow, right? Like just do it. You're not thinking about it. The natural attributes coming through. And his view was that if you clear your mind of everything you've got going on, you know, I've got to go and pick up my dry cleaning, I've got to take the kids to school in the morning, I've got to do whatever. Your mind should be completely clear before you're going to go out on the court and play. And he used to do meditation with the players. He used to be, you know, very, use a lot of those Buddhisms, sort of Native Americans, if you've read his books, Native American philosophies on things spiritual. And, you know, people bought into it.
Incredible.
And obviously, his success, you know, it's the most successful coach in NBA history.
I wonder how it was being a coach at that time with such big stars, you know, Pippen, Jordan, Rodman, all of these guys that are still spoke about today at the highest level. Did he talk about the dynamics of the relationships that he had with these superstar elite athletes?
I think it was all about relationships.
Yeah.
And it's obviously management of relationships. But I think if you look through anyone who's been super successful, look at Sir Alex Ferguson. You know, you look about how he's handled certain situations and certain players and certain characters, and you're not always going to get it right. But, you know, that's part and parcel of why he was so successful. You know, at young ages, you listen to stories from, you know, Bex or Giggs or Sharpie or any of those, you know, turning up at parties and pulling them in and getting Lee Sharp to stay with him in the house, and you know, all the things that he realised as his father figure, if you like, that he needed to do for those young lads, and then letting the older players like the Robsons and the Bruces like control of what the dressing room was. I mean, it's part and parcel of management. There's a huge psyche in that, and there's a huge respect in that. And just like I said originally, you know, when you talk about TVs in physio rooms, my view is that, you know, you set the boundaries and you work within the boundaries of what you believe in and stick to it. I think you can adapt. You have to be rigid, but I think you have to stick to your beliefs and your philosophies and your views and adapt it over the years and change. And that's exactly what these people do. You know, when he went from the Bulls to the Lakers, clearly there were some changes because he's got different characters. He's now got Kobe and Shaq. You know, he's got that relationship. He's got other players around it, the peripheral, but he adapted, and all of a sudden then you're in from one dynasty to another dynasty with the Lakers.
Must have been like a dream for you, sat having breakfast with this guy every morning.
Well, I definitely was more sponging off him than I was probably sponged off a lot of people.
Did you work out what his regime was? What time he arrives? What time?
I was in at 7 a.m. It didn't matter if he had breakfast at 9. I would be having 25 cups of coffee just to make sure that I could sit next to him when he came in or beside him.
What an opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just utilising those opportunities and being that sponge.
It's fantastic, isn't it, when you hear the stories of because someone like myself, I've only ever seen them on TV or documentaries, and then to speak to you that's actually sat with them and got to know them and also built up rapport and relationships with these people that if you saw them in the street, some of these icons that you mentioned, they would say, "Hey, Dave, how are you?" And I remember you telling me when you introduced Steven Gerrard to Paul McCartney. I mean, imagine that though, Dave, when you think about it, a physio introducing these two icons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my view is that sometimes the opportunities in life come up and you got to go and grab them. And that was one where I was like, I was really close with Stevie. He was another great guy, great player, but just a great human, right? And we were having dinner and I just happened to be in Los Angeles when he was playing for Galaxy. And in comes Sir Paul and his wife, Nancy. And I said to him, "Have you ever met him?" And he said, "No." I said, "Come on, I'll introduce you." He goes, no. You know, it's all through the meal I was saying to him, "Steve, look, you know, this is, you're a Liverpool legend. He's obviously a Liverpool legend. Why shouldn't you say hello to him?" No. He was embarrassed.
Really?
Yeah. And in the end, I just was like, you know what have I got to lose here? You know, it's not as if I don't know the guy or I've only met him once. And I just went, "I'm really sorry." You know, it's quite respectful. You have to be respectful.
And I said to him, I said, do you mind if I introduce you? He said, no, not at all. And I remember Stevie came up to shake his hand and Paul just came up and just gave him a massive hug. And I just sort of left him and spoke to his Nancy, and I was like, that's really cool. You know, and Stevie said to me, I've never been so nervous in all my life. I said, what are you talking about? I said, you played in World Cups and Champions League finals and this, that, and the other. But, you know, for me, it's like, well, let's connect two great people and hopefully something that Steve will remember for the rest of his life.
And interesting, though, Dave, that someone as formidable as Steven Gerrard was overwhelmed and slightly apprehensive and didn't want to.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're all human beings, right? We all
Correct.
got emotions. We all got stress. We all breathe. We all shit, right? We all sleep. We all do the same things. So just because you are, you know, in the spotlight or you are the best at what you do, they've all got those emotions. They're not going to be any different from you or me.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't see that. People don't know that. But it's true.
Mm.
And therefore, you know, support it.
Yeah.
Respect it.
How did you go from being so dominant in the sports world to then becoming the physio for the Kim Kardashians, Madonnas, you know, James Bond, all of these superstars? How does that even happen?
Luck, really. I just think right place, right time, word of mouth, and just being yourself and being honest. And, you know, like I said, you're not going to get on with everyone, but I'm very much like, you know, if I can help, I help, and whoever it is, I'll try and help you. And I think that sort of spiral to people talk to someone and meet someone who knows someone else, and you need to, and that's the best process of word of mouth, is someone recommended you who knows them personally, and trust.
Mm.
Trust is a massive, massive thing.
Especially in their world,
Yeah.
without doubt.
Yeah.
What was your first, who was the first big celebrity name that you treated that then did that open the doors for the next celebrity, the next one? Who was the first one and how did that happen?
It was probably Daniel. And it came about through Simon, his trainer. And then Simon's opened many doors for me. Because I built up a good relationship with Simon, but I got to get asked because I'd helped Simon when I was at Chelsea.
Who's Simon?
Simon Waterston is the personal trainer to a lot of movie stars. He's the Bond trainer. So he did all of the Bond movies, and he did Piers before Daniel. He's a great guy, ex-military, fantastic at what he does. Like, unbelievable how he transforms bodies for movies. With Captain America, you know, Star Wars, I mean, you can go on and on. He's the guy.
Yeah.
And he reached out to me when I didn't know him from Adam. He just reached out to me, and I was like, he said, do you mind if I ask you a couple? I said, sure, whatever you want. And he asked me some questions on recovery. He said, what do you do for this in football? And I said, well, we do this, this, and this, and here's some articles, and here's some bits and pieces. And then he came back and asked me a few more questions. I was like, yeah, sure, here you go. Yeah, I don't want anything from him. Just help someone out. And then full circle, whatever that was, 5-6 years later, I get this phone call. Where are you? We've got a problem. Can you come and help?
And that was with Daniel Craig.
So that, like I said, it's like, you know, trying to help someone when they're asking for something. You know, try and do that. Don't diss someone. Don't and it's difficult, right? Because you know, like, the more popular you get, the more you get asked. But generally speaking, try and help people that if you feel you can, even if it's just to know, just to be polite, you know. And you'll be surprised about how that comes back to help you later on in life, for sure.
Yeah. How did you feel meeting these people? Did you have the Steven Gerrard meeting, Sir Paul McCartney, apprehension, nerves when you was... No?
No, I loved it.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it because I'm just helping someone in an indirect way and bringing two people together, which is lovely. There's nothing more rewarding than that. Like, you know, they're just human beings that obviously are iconic in where they're from, but, you know, why not?
Yeah. And then I guess for you to see that you've supported these celebrities, these musicians, these artists, to then watch Ashley Cole play in the Champions League final, you know, to watch Sir Paul, whoever it is that's gone from, obviously they've got an issue that they need resolving because that's why you're there, to then see them to be able to perform and you've been a part of that jigsaw puzzle. It must be a wonderful feeling.
To be honest, I don't actually think, right? I'm always looking on. I don't, you know, like I said, I only tend to reminisce a bit when I'm doing things like this with you. But it's nice, the fact that you can pick up a conversation with someone, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years later when you haven't seen them. And it's like as if you were back with them wherever you worked with them, you know, in the past. I think that's a wonderful thing to have. I was up at Middlesbrough with Jonathan Woodgate. You know, it's like as if we'd never, I haven't seen Woody for 6, 7 years, but it was almost like, well, we were back in the treatment room in Leeds, or I was in Madrid helping him, you know, whatever it was. It was like no different.
Yeah, brilliant.
And so that human connection for me is really important. It's a wonderful thing to have.
And was
like
that?
I said, it doesn't work with everyone. It's like sometimes you know you'll get dissed, and the view is you know, you're not going to be popular with everyone. You're not going to be friends with everyone, but just don't let it dwell. Don't be negative about it. My view is, you know, it is what it is. It's, you know, just move on.
Yeah, like you said, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Have resentment. Yeah, a lot of people have a lot of resentment in life. And I think you shouldn't be put too much stress into resentment.
Yeah.
I think we can sometimes get too anxious, too stressful, too hatred. You know, it's like we're not here very long. So therefore, you know, look at all the positive sides of things. And I think moving to America, that's another thing. I think the Americans seem to be a lot more positive about life than the British mentality.
Yeah.
I've noticed that a lot of people in the States who've living there now for 15 years is, you know, it's a lot more positive about outlook and helping.
How was that change from football to basketball? How was that?
It was difficult, but again, I just saw it as a challenge, and I was like, you know, observe, listen, learn, sponge, loads and loads of sponging, about asking about why do they do that? What do they do that? What does this position do? How does that work? You know, learn. You don't have to be in a textbook. You don't have to be watching film. Just observe and take in. And the more of that you learn, then, you know, again, that can help in different skill sets when you the challenge with something else within business or within working with another sport, like moving into baseball, you know, not knowing anything about it, but just knowing that, you know, at the end of the day, it's about winning.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, how do we achieve winning? How do we get from where we are to win? What are the nuances to win? What are the things you've seen somewhere else that work for someone else to win? And whether you think that you can apply that in this environment. Will that environment work? Will that human connection work? What's the philosophy? What's the attitudes? What's, you know, the nuances of how this sport works compared to that sport?
How did the visit to the White House come around then? Was that with the Knicks?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
We had a player called Chris Duhan, who was a wonderful guy, very smart, went to Duke, and he played on basketball team with Reggie Love, who was President Obama's right-hand man. And the year before they went to the Wizards, the Knicks, they had a tour of the White House, and I brought an English guy over, a physio called Andy Barr, after my second year or first year. I brought Andy over to work with us, and I asked Chris if we could have a visit to the White House, because obviously we're playing the Wizards and we were going in the day before and we had some time to kill. And he said, would you like to go? I said, yeah, me and Andy would love to go. And he asked a few others, and he said, who hadn't been able to go on that trip. And he said, oh, I'll sort that for you. And then again, don't ask, don't get. I said, if there's any chance the top man's in, could we meet him? just being cheeky chappy Dave. And he said, let me see what I can do. He said, I can't guarantee that. And lo and behold, that's what happened.
Wow. What was that like?
Oh, incredible. Went into the Oval Office, met him. It was like 7 of us. And we had a photograph taken we were obviously not allowed phones, so you had to form clearance checks and all sorts. And again, one of those guys that was so lovely and welcoming, and you could just air that he would just took the stress from you, just took you down a level, was comforting and just like, hey, cracking some jokes. And you're like, oh my God, this is one of the most powerful guys in the world. And he's just giving 5 minutes of his time just to say hello. And he's having a bit of a laugh with us.
Incredible.
And I was like, this guy's class, absolute class. Yeah, great.
Can you remember what you talked about?
Yeah, he asked Al Harrington, who was the player. One of the players came with us, and he said, "I've only got my tracksuit." And I said, "You can't go to the White House in your tracksuit, Al." So he went out and bought this most horrendous trousers and yellow jumper, and obviously President Obama was a huge basketball fan. So I was saying to Al, I said, "Will he know who you are?" And Al said, "Of course he know who I am. You know, he's been a vet in the NBA." We had a bit of a giggle about that. So when Al went in, he gave shook everyone's hand, and Al said to him, he said, "What are you doing here, Al?" And he said, "Well, actually, I wanted some of those presidential cufflinks." So apparently they have presidential cufflinks that they give to, you know, honorary estates and countries that come in as a gift. And he said, turned around straight away and said, "Well, what are you going to do with them, Al? You're going to sell them on eBay." So that sort of just made the whole room laugh. And then he said, "You've got the Brits here." And he said, "What are you doing with Brits and the Knicks?" He said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, President Obama was hoping you could push my green card through." So we had a bit of a giggle about that, but he was an absolute gentleman.
Yeah. It sounds like a common theme of these people that you've said it a few times, that they find a way to just take the stress away from what you may be feeling in their presence. What a gift! What a gift that is, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Yeah.
I love that photo. I love that photo. It's like on your LinkedIn profile.
The best bit. You talk about bringing you right down to earth. You know, being a little bit like big time about what you've done. And your dad turns around and says, I said, "Here's a photo, Dad, of us at the White House and President Obama." He said, "Cool, don't you look fat in that suit?" That's the first thing he said to me.
Was it?
Talk about your dad bringing you right down to earth. Yeah, like with a big bomb.
Did he delve deeper into the visit, or was that his first instinct?
No, that was his line. "Let's bring you right back down to earth, son."
Brilliant. Trust your family to just do that for you.
Absolutely. Loved it.
What a moment, though, that day. I'm not so sure how you don't look back a lot when you've done these things and met these people, because I think it's so inspiring for other young people looking to get into something. You know, you think you've gone from that young guy that has a passion for something, that's given it a go and dedicated and become a master of his craft, and still is striving to become better all the time. Of the places that's taken you is just out of this world, isn't it?
Yeah, as I said, I don't really normally look back on it, but you know, my view is just be yourself and just be determined to be better at what you do. Learn from your mistakes, learn from situations. Be a sponge. Don't ask, don't get. But I'm always like striving. I'm always trying to improve. Like even with the software company I'm running now, it's really fascinating for me because I'm sort of moved into a different area of tech. We're realizing from all the sort of experiences you had as a practitioner, what we can use tech to help organizations, improve. And it's quite amazing that you go to these clubs and organizations and you realize that you think that they are, using and optimizing tech and data, when in fact they're not. So that's a new challenge for me, to try and sort of build this business and explain to people what we're doing and the sports tech perspective, like how we can actually help organizations.
So tell me about that, Dave. You go from a physio, working as a 24/7, looking after people's bodies, supporting them, all the things you've talked about today, to now being a CEO, having your own organization. How's that transition been from being in sport, where you're a part of a team, to actually being the Phil Jackson and in an industry that's kind of, the tech's new to you, but actually what the tech does isn't new. How's that been?
Yeah, well, obviously there's the practical side of it and understanding how like the nuances work within teams I've sort of grown up with. So that's been a huge advantage to us as a business. And I've sort of looked at like what is out there, what are people doing, what are people not doing, what are the challenges? How can you answer the challenges that people have? What are the systems that they're using? What problems are they having with those systems? What do those systems, what don't they do? And you know, I've sort of also seen the development of the business and the mistakes that the business made when I wasn't really involved. So when I took over the business about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to start again and build a brand new product because of some of the mistakes we made building the first product. So now building the sort of V2 version 2, we started again and looked at it at a completely different angle, learning all the things that had gone on in the past and what experiences I'd had using other products, other competitive products of ours in this space of sort of sport and data. And then now sort of the challenges are to sort of obviously build the business, raise capital, look after clients in the way that I would want to look after a client, whether that's a physical therapy, training, nutrition, whatever we were doing in the past, or an athlete. Exactly the same within our business. And the way that I see our business growing and expanding is here's my team, right? Everyone has a job to do within the team. Your job is to do X and Y. I need you to concentrate on that. How do I help you? How do I support you? How do I let you evolve? And the same thing as the Phil Jackson thing is, well, this client, this guy here does best when you don't really interfere with what he's doing, where this guy needs to be coached more, or this guy needs to be, you know, time managed more. So it's no different from the sport. I see it as a sports team. And obviously I've moved up the ladder in what I've done. And now I'm applying that skill and knowledge into using tech to assist people like what I was doing in the past. I'll give you an example. Like, you know, every day as a physio, you get to the end of the day, you'd be absolutely exhausted. You just done a 8-hour, 10-hour shift, 7 days a week, Christmas Day, New Year's, you know, NBA, you're getting at 3 a.m. You got back-to-back playing the next day. You get back at 3 a.m. the next night, and then you got to go back and work the next day. It's like relentless. You know, lack of sleep, lack of pressure, lack of, you know, Groundhog Day, whatever it is. But we spend an hour every day writing our notes up, which we have to do medically. So we produced voice to text. Press a button on my phone, talk in my phone, put your notes in. Literally a minute, what I've spent hours doing for years and years, I can now do within 5 minutes for the entire squad that I've treated today.
Yeah.
So that in itself, saving someone time in the ground is huge. But if you never worked in it and never really understood the nuances of what it is and what it takes to actually do and what you have to do, couldn't really apply that to a tech company if you haven't really experienced it. There's no techie or no engineer would ever understand that.
Yeah. Give me a specific, Dave, of where it would really benefit an athlete, other than what you've just said there, cutting down time of logging notes. How does it really benefit the athlete?
So the problem at the minute in any organization is the data is everywhere. Okay. And it's not cross-linked. And if it is cross-linked or crossed over, it's not instant, it's not live. So you end up having all these different silos of information, people's data on laptops, phones, GPS units, game data, scouting data, video, right? You've got all these different departments doing things to improve the function and the way the train moves forward, if you like.
Yeah.
But the problem is if that connection isn't quick enough, the train can stop and start. So what we do is we go, look, continue using all the things you're doing, but let us bring it all together live and let us make sense of it. And then now with AI, building models around what that data means. So let the machine learn what you're doing, and give you outcomes. Might not necessarily change what your gut's telling you or your philosophy is, but might highlight something to you, which might be an injury risk, or might be something to do with performance or psychology or coaching or whatever. At the minute, it moves so fast, but the data is still lacking behind to allow you to use and look at that in the right way. And then you're looking at the people using it. So the way a coach works is not the way a physio works, or a doctor works, or a strength coach works, and a GM is not the way that the coach works. So you need to be able to adapt the system to complement how they work. And then when a new coach comes in, all that's blown up, the system needs to adapt again. And the problem in our industry is that every time you want adaptation, you have to code. So what we've done is we've built a foundation, like a Lego set, that you can build however you want your club solution to be. And then if someone else comes in, you can just take it down and rebuild it again without needing to code. And that's like that's something which is very, very, very unique.
Is this for all sports you're looking at?
Yeah. So we look after a number of huge teams around the world, like Alabama football, Manchester United, Brighton, USC, US Olympic teams, Aussie rules teams. So we're growing the business. The business is growing really fast, but we're doing something very different, and that's the niche.
Did you create this?
Yeah. So it's sort of my brain and how I think and how I process things from a technical perspective. It's not easy, I can tell you that, and it's taken a lot of time. And we're not off the wheel. We're constantly pushing and innovating what we're doing, which is again quite a real interesting thing. Like AI is becoming a really interesting thing for me, and the use of communication and data using AI is really fascinating. And I can see some real benefits from thinking back to them days in the 90s and the early 2000s about how would this work in that environment? How would this work in the baseball environment? How would this work in the American football environment? How would this work at youth level? How would this work, high school level, college level? How, the same blocks are coming up at all these different levels, coach, athlete, support staff. It's the same things that are coming up at various different levels. And no matter where I go and see their operations and their processes and policies, there's still this sticking point of getting data to the right people fast enough in the way that it will affect change. It's all very well creating something, but if the coach is going to look at it and go, what is that piece of shit? I'm not interested in that. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. What's the point? But if you understand how the coach thinks, or you understand what the coach is looking for, and you can adapt it for the coach, that's where data can be very helpful.
Yeah.
And what you do for the coach and what you do for the assistant coach might be different.
Yeah. So it's interesting because really what you're doing there is finding a way to enhance the speed of information to get to the right people, to increase the opportunity for the athlete to win, the team to win, which is what everybody's looking for, isn't it? How to improve the efficiency. And I'm just thinking back to when you referred back to the 90s, early 2000s, when everything was pen and paper, wasn't it? And a lot of it was instinct and conversations and interpretation of miscommunication of what someone should or shouldn't be doing and all of that stuff. So you're really looking to eliminate that, aren't you? Make things as fast as you can.
Yeah.
What's the barrier? What's the barrier that you've faced with it and getting it in?
Lots of barriers, Luke. Barriers every day. Money's always a barrier when you're looking to expand. Bringing on board the philosophy or selling the philosophy to people who work within those environments, to actually get them to understand that this is different from something else that they're using.
Yeah.
And like anything in life, change. People don't like change, right? But sometimes you have to adapt or change the things that you're doing to improve what you're doing. Like I said, I'm like, we win X number of cups at Chelsea. I'm thinking forward, like, how do we change what we've just done this season to next season? But not everyone's doing that. They're quite happy with we won it here, so why do we need to change? Well, you can always do something better. Always.
Yeah. You still
relentless pursuit.
Are you still practicing physio yourself then? Are you still treating people?
Very rarely now. I've still got the physio business in London, and we have a clinic in New York, but very, very rarely. I sort of have a select few athletes and people that I see, but I'm full time pretty much with Apollo. It's sort of my brainchild. It's sort of my last hurrah. It's something that I'm sort of really determined now to sort of succeed and grow and develop. Again, trying to help, but help rather than help from a treatment, hands-on approach, to now try and help using technology. And I think there's many things that tech can do to help people, and people aren't aware of it. The voice to text is the most simplistic thing, but people aren't aware of it.
Yeah.
People aren't aware that actually that is really time saving for any user. And you also can collect data that you might not be collecting. So if you're a coach, press a button, talk in your phone is easy. But you ask a coach to go and write up a report on a player or this training session today, doesn't happen. But that subjective view of the coach is actually very important for a development of an individual, development of a team.
Yeah.
Because if I can sit and understand what you're thinking, and you can share your thoughts with me on that player, I can utilize your thoughts to help what I'm doing, say in the gym or in the treatment room or in the conditioning. And I can adapt how I condition you as an athlete to how this coach thinks and how this coach plays. Because at the end of the day, right, we're all in the same family to get the same thing, which is to win. It's the goal. But you just don't see it. You see this very much, still this silo, and I'm not sharing that with you. And you're like, dude, we're on the same team.
Yeah.
We're all got the same goal. You don't need to build your empire, right, in this organization. It's like we're here together. We win. We all get benefit of it. And when you've experienced it,
yeah,
you want to experience it more and more and more. And there's nothing better than being involved in an organization that wins. Nothing better.
Well, you've been around that for a long time, haven't you? And I'm just wondering, as you're talking, how challenging it is to find human beings that have got that mentality outside of the sports world, when sport is all about the winning, and they love it, and they don't work to a time of 9 to 5. It's just relentless pursuit of greatness. How have you found that in terms of in the everyday world, in the business world, finding that elite mindset? Because even like you said earlier, in sport, there's still some sports people that haven't got that, like the guy that wants to be a first team player that's choosing to be on his phone and just rocking up late. So he's clearly someone that would be a challenge as a team member outside in the business world too, that they're just doing what they want to do. And have you found that more difficult to come across?
Well, there's a couple of people that I know, sort of, some of them are friends, some of them are colleagues, who you would classify as sort of super successful billionaires. And I see the same trait in them that I would in, say, a Frank Lampard or a Kevin Durant or a Bono. I see it.
Yeah.
Completely different. And you ask yourself, right? So they got their jets, they got their houses all around the world. And don't get me wrong, they enjoy their lives, right? Because financially they can, but they still work. And there's sometimes I look at, like, one of my friends, I'm thinking to myself, why are you doing it? But I think that's what motivates this individual. And that's why I look at that individual and think, well, that's why you've been so successful. This guy's 68. He don't need to work. And you should, there'll be times where we're like, well, you made it, you should enjoy it. He still enjoys it, don't get me wrong, but he's still pursuing.
Enjoys the pursuit.
He's still up at 6 a.m. He's still basically, doing a 10, 12-hour day. So, and that's not for everyone. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. But if you want to be successful, and you look at, like, this individual, for instance, I look at that and think, well, that's why you have been so successful. If you want to look at success in, many different ways to look at success. So you can look at success in a monetary way. You can look in success in a health way. You can look in success in a family way. You can look at success in a mindful way. Everyone has their own views about what level of what you classify as success. The biggest success for me is happiness.
Yeah.
You know, like I said to you, like even what I'm doing now, that's classify it as a job. I classify it as a hobby. It's just, like I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. But I love what I'm doing. Absolutely adore what I do.
Yeah.
I still get a kick out of it. You know, like I'm going to a football club now to go and pitch and present. I'm going to love it.
Yeah.
Whether we get the pitch or not, I'm going to love it. Because I'm going to be showing them things that we've been doing different from someone else and explain to them why we're doing it and see if that, you know, in effect, I can sell them our idea or our philosophy about what we're doing.
So your happiness
That's pursuit.
Your happiness isn't actually the winning the, of course it's great to win the deal, win the contract, and because they value what you do. It sounds like your happiness is the pursuit of something that you're passionate about and believe in. Is that right?
Correct.
And enjoying it all the way and just giving it everything. You seem to get a real buzz from that.
Correct.
Progress, keep moving.
Yeah, correct. And the other thing I think it doesn't happen every day is that every day you got to laugh. Like yesterday I had a conversation with my team, and someone said something, and then I went off at a tangent and told them a very funny story, and then someone else told them another funny story. And before we'd even talked about what we were talking about as a business, we had probably a 20-minute conversation of just laughing as a group. And I came away from the meeting, and I was more happy about the stories and the conversations than I was about what the outcomes that we were talking about we need to do in a business, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the fact that, you know, you don't always take yourself serious as well, right? You know, it's another laughing self. That's another trait that I've always, you know, I'm laughing, I'm giggling inside my head now telling the story about the TV. But in the end, it got to the point where I would laugh at them and they would laugh at me, like having that argument. I know deep down that they wanted to TV in the bloody physio room, but I was never going to give in because I was stubborn. So it became almost like a comical conversation.
Laughing,
and even if I met
amazing.
Them, even if I met them today, we would have a laugh about that situation.
But I think the benefit of the laughter, it just definitely brings a joy to you, doesn't it? And it's just, it can remove the toughness of what you might be talking about, and just that feeling of laughing. Again, it's a great philosophy of winning that you've just said there, to laugh every day, to love the pursuit, be passionate about where you're going, and constantly looking at how you can progress and do things better. And even if you don't, like you say today, even if you don't get the result that you want, you've had a great day, which means you're more likely to have a better day tomorrow too. And you're going to be a better father and a husband because you've had a great day in pursuit of something. A question that comes to my mind, and we'll end on this because I know you've got to make your move. What, if you could pick 5 individuals that you've worked with, served, met across your whole career, life, to come and join you now in your business, forget the roles that they would take, but if you could pick, let's say 5 people for the person of what they are to be in your business, who would they be? Anybody at all you've ever met in your whole life?
I think that would be quite a successful business.
It's the characteristics that I'm wanting to pull from you here and know what you think makes up that organization.
Number 1 would be my mum.
Interesting.
Okay. Number 2, and she's right beside me here, but it's true, would be my wife, because she has a completely different perspective to me. Right? Completely different perspective. And sometimes she actually is like any relationship, she gives you a different soundboard about something. Even like she's a lawyer, so sometimes I'll be talking to her about something, and she'll look at something and no, this is a better way to do this.
So Dave, just on that, so number 1, your mum for her work ethic.
Yeah.
Your wife for perspective.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Phil Jackson. Philosophy.
Philosophy.
Yeah. Number 4, Bono. Well, no, actually, Bono and I'd say you too, because they're all very different.
Probably out of all of them, it's probably the Edge for his artistic flair. But if I had to choose, if I could take the band, I'd take the band.
Yeah. So for what reason have you said them then?
Just because they're just brilliant at what they do, like reinvent themselves. The whole, if anyone is listening has been to the Sphere, has been to Joshua Tree tours, just see what show they put on, and seeing how they rehearse, and what goes on behind the scenes to get that almost like, pursuit of perfection. It's them. Every single one, and they're all very different, very different.
Yeah.
And they're not all talented, which is also, they're not like, they admit themselves, they're not like they don't classify themselves as like hugely talented musicians. They just have to work at it, but they still work, and they're like, it's incredible. I mean, it's just, every time I'm around it, I was with them at the Sphere just before Christmas, and I was just sort of in awe every single night, even though you're seeing it time and time again. You just like the preparation, what they do, the dedication, their application. Bono is probably one of the hardest working individuals I think I've ever come across on the planet.
Yeah.
And Edge is one of the most like intelligent, artistic people. And then like Adam is one of those workers that constantly is pursuing, and then the same for Larry. It's like they're all very different, but they, as a mix, they bring so much together. And it when you're sort of on the periphery of it, and then the people they have around them, like phenomenal people at what they do. People have been with them for like 30, 40 years. That as well is quite phenomenal.
Yeah.
People like Joe Hurley, who's the sound engineer, Willie, who does all the graphics and the creation, the wardrobe girls, Sharon, like all these people that are around, you wouldn't even know who they are. But it's an incredible family machine, produces what it produces, whatever they want to do.
It's
a
really business.
Inspiring.
It's a business,
Yeah.
in it. So when you're talking about that the performance is Frank Lampard going onto the pitch, but behind that is a massive team enabling that whole life to take place. And you're talking about you too there. We see the people on the stage, but you just mentioned the ladies behind the scenes, all of those people. And when you think of Apollo, what you're creating now, you must give you a huge advantage to have been able to see what these great teams do and how they operate and what tenacity they show, what fundamentals they all have to then help you build what you're building now. So all those years you've spent in that elite arena, you're picking and pulling from all of them. Who's number 5 then?
Jane Tomlinson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Resilience.
Yeah. For obvious reasons from what you talked about earlier.
An inspiration. Yeah. Like just couldn't touch it. Just like incredible.
Imagine a team like that.
Every time I talk about it, I'm like starting to well up a bit. I'm like, I just can't. It doesn't make sense to me. And the thing is, I always like this sponge where I want to know why. I want to know why. And sometimes there isn't an answer of why, apart from you step back in awe and like incredible.
Yeah.
But the mindset and resilience of what she must have gone through is like awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
To anyone, any walk of life. Like she was just a normal me and you. She was no athlete. She didn't have to do what she did. She knew she was going to die. Like can't comprehend it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huge respect and admiration for someone like that. Done what? And there's lots of people around like that. Really.
When you think of those names, your mum for work ethic, you've got the creative flair with you too, the resilience of Jane, and the ingredients of which you're talking about there, of these people, the perspective from your wife and companies. I'm not so sure that it just came to me as you was talking. I'm thinking, what a team and what a combination of characteristics you've got there from all of these people. You've met people like Obama and all of these people, and you're picking your mum. So what I love about that is that it brings hope, I think, to all of us everyday people, that we can achieve greatness in our lives when we love something and we pursue it with everything that we've got. If you have the work ethic, the perspective, the creativeness, the passion, the resilience, all of them characteristics, we can all have them. And you also said that you two accept and say they aren't overly talented, which again, I think brings hope to so many people listening to this, that you're not born with a right to become a superstar. You earn that right in whatever it is you do in sport, life and business, relationships, parenthood. You earn the right to be create mastery in your life in something. And I'm very similar to yourself in terms of my pursuit of progress is what really fulfills me and excites me, that we're now in a studio doing a podcast when 3 years ago it was in a kitchen in an echoey room. To me, without knowing it and really strategically planning it, it's happened because of the desire to, I wonder where we could do something better. I wonder how we could make the experience for the listener and the viewers even better. And then before you know it, your mind starts to think about who would you want to have conversations with that you could potentially get in front of the camera to share words of hope, inspiration, and wisdom with people that will listen and want to listen, because people that don't want more from life will not listen to this conversation. People that do want more will listen, and they might take one thing, and it might be the dream team of which you've just discussed. It might be a CEO, an entrepreneur, or someone that runs a huge company or starting a small one that goes, I want all of those key characteristics that Dave was talking about there within the people around me and my leadership team. Because if you've got those people around you, you can go on a 30-year winning streak like you two have when you've got the right team surrounding you. And that's what excites me. It's the pursuit of progress is just a beautiful thing. And it's not until you start to see progress and start to get a few wins that you start to think, actually, I'm doing all right. And it brings confidence to do more and to do more. And what excites me of talking to you, Dave, is that you have been at the top of your game for over 2 decades, yet it's like you've started something now that you're now looking, how do I get to the top of the game in that? How do I create a team, a brand, a culture, a business that's going to impact people all over the world? And now it's like you're at the beginning again. Although you've done so much, you're now at the beginning of the next chapter. And I find that fascinating, and it really intrigues me and excites me that there's always something coming. There's always something coming. And I really appreciate you taking the time to sit with me and share so many stories. And it doesn't seem like, other than a couple of weeks ago when I had the privilege to work with your wonderful physiotherapy team in London, before that, 1997, 1998, when we met, my mind keeps going back to that guy that I used to see you pumping weights in the gym and proper going for it and making everybody work really hard when they potentially didn't. But you've stuck to that philosophy in your mid-20s to now, and you can see it serving you really well. If there was one question, Dave, that I could ask you that I haven't asked you that you would like to answer, what would it be?
Well, there'll be questions like, what's the end game? But I don't think I'd have an answer for you.
Interesting that.
I don't think I'd have an answer for you. I mean, I talk about, well, you know, when I grow up a company and, you know, and when I sail off into the distance, but if I'm honest, I don't think I ever stop. I said to you, my mum's still working at 80. And like I said, it's not really a job, it's a hobby. And I think that's the thing. I think people need to sort of look at what they're doing in life and what they want to do. Take some risk, sponge, don't ask, don't get. I think they're the sort of things that I sort of stick to, and, you know, would encourage listeners, young listeners especially, you know, dream. Your view is, you know, like I explained to you about these people that, you know, sometimes they aren't successful, but they get back up and they do again. And you hear all these stories from all these people. Yeah, Madonna's story, it's like phenomenal. He's down and out, didn't have any money, you know, he's got knocked back, never going to be successful, knocked back. Wow. Let's look at what she's doing now, like incredible.
Forever as well.
I don't really have the question that you asked. I think, like I said, I don't think I'll have an answer for the end game.
What would be a dream though, Dave? So if rather than the end game, what's a dream that you've not accomplished that you would really love to?
My goal is I want to help use technology to develop youth sport around the world.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's enough individual training from coaches because they don't have time. And I think there's a way to do this using tech to develop youth athletes and the athletes for the future in any sport. And that's really my real goal. That's really where I want to go. Having all the fancy clubs and the names and this is great, but really where I want to go is into youth development, youth sport. And I think I've got a great background to do it. I think we've got some unique technology that we're testing at the minute. And I think, you know, if we get enough people on board and back us, we can grow this and we can try and achieve them.
Yeah.
That would be my legacy.
And listening to you, it's really interesting that you're drawn to that younger generation, you know, like I am in a lot of work that I do. People often say to me, what makes you do so much work with young people, Luke? And, you know, in the corporate world, you'd be smashing it. You'd earn so much more money than you do, even though they don't know what I earn, but they would say you could earn so much more money in the corporate world than working with young people. And I do work in the corporate world and I do work in the business world and I do really enjoy it. However, there's nothing like empowering and changing a young person's life that years later they've remembered it. And they're just, when you was talking to me there on the train to here today, this is a prime example that my work that I do in the business world and the corporate world, I love it because I love people. I love helping people improve their performance. I just get a buzz from that. However, when I'm on the train today, I went into Costa Coffee at the platform and ordered a black Americano. And there was a lady in there that looked as if she knew me, but I didn't know her. And I just looked and said hello, and that was it. I go to the platform. She comes to the platform. She stands right next to me and she said, "Are you Luke?" I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "Luke Staton." I said, yeah, that's right. And she went, "My son knows you." And I said, "Okay, what's your son's name?" And she tells me her son's name. And I'm not going to use his name because of what he's been through. And potentially you may not want this aired. And she said, "You went to his school 6 years ago and did a talk at a local school in the area of where I'm from." And she said, he was diagnosed as a kid. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps relaying this story as the mum's telling me today on the platform. She said he was diagnosed as a kid with a rare cancer and was told he would not reach his teenage and into adulthood. We was categorically told that. She said one of the big hospitals in London, he got an infection and they said, "We're really sorry. There's nothing we can do." So he's been preparing to die his whole life, preparing to die. His family preparing for their son, who they love more than anything in the world. They're all preparing for him to die. And she stood on this platform. She said, "He was in your talk." And after he left that talk, he was due to go into some treatment. And he went through a series of years, over the last 5-6 years of treatment, constantly having treatment. And her words, she said to me, "You saw him recently." She said, "You walked into McDonald's and he was in there and he was sat down and he came home and told me that he saw you and you said hello to him. I didn't know where I knew him, but I knew the way he looked at me and the way I looked at him. I had a feeling. So I just said hello. That was it." He's gone home and told his mum, which has meant his mum's brought me to her attention. She stood on the platform and she said, "My son said that when he left that talk, he applied some of the things that you shared in that room when he was going through his challenging times from his treatment. He was thinking of the things that you was telling him." Now, I'm telling stories of a young kid that wanted to be a dream to be a footballer and failed because he wasn't good enough. It's absolutely nothing in comparison to what this kid was going through. Yet he found a way to articulate and bring the story across to him and his life, to give him every ounce of effort and energy he could to get through the treatment that he was going through. And she said, "Luke, you won't believe it, that the treatment that he went through, because he kept living, and now he's 19, I think she said, nearly 20. He's now been told that his body is recovering and is allowed to do normal things. He can go for a few drinks.
Oh.
He's been to a festival." And she said, "He talks about you, Luke, with that affinity." She said, "You must have had an impact." And I'm thinking, that was a 60-minute talk, Dave, 6 years ago. in a secondary school where I stood there for 4 or 5 hours and did 4 to 5 hours back to back to speak to as many kids as I possibly could. And you never know the impact. And as soon as I hear that, it makes me think, that's why I'm so driven to work with more and more young people. So when I hear you say that, I see it deeper, that when you say about sport and about giving these youngsters an opportunity to develop in sport, I honestly believe with the energy that you've got of looking to do what you're going to do, you won't just bring energy to their sport, you'll change their life, because sport change, transforms and saves lives, because it has for me and you. We're not sat here if we don't enter sport at a young age. We're not doing this. You know, sport is like a blessing, and it gives you that energy and that propels you to go on to do other things. So just that opportunity for a youngster to be able to engage with what you've got that can enhance their performance, that can change their whole life, their family's wealth, their family's life for generations to come. So it's bigger, isn't it, than just improving sports performance. It's game changing. And thanks so much, Dave, for sharing so much. It's been wonderful. I could speak to you for hours, and hopefully I'll get to see you soon in America when I come over there and embrace the opportunities that are over there for people like you and I that have got this desire for more from life to help other people too. So from me to you, Dave, thank you so much. It's been wonderful seeing you and speaking to you once again. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. You're welcome anytime. Come and see us.